Everyone, what's up? It's me again, Young Monster 3, and this is going to be sort of like a double thing type of video because gonna do the Horrorthon video, which where I basically just mention all of the films that I've watched and a little bit of what I thought about each and every one of them. And this is also gonna be the top five of the month for the month of October. And for those of you who know, I mainly just watch horror films during the month of October. So these are only horror films in this list of films that I've watched. So first of all, I'm just gonna mention all the films that I watched, and then I'm gonna tell you which of these all movies that have made it into my top five of the month list. So yeah, let's begin right away. First up, as a film that I watched was a film called Office Killer from 1997. Just when I thought of that title, or like when I heard that title, I immediately thought, okay, this must be some really entertaining slasher film. But I wouldn't really say it was that much of a slasher film because you pretty much know from the get go who the killer is, and the killer is really annoying, and you can't stand the actress who plays the killer. I'm maybe not really sure if it's meant to be like that, but it's really damn irritating. But yeah, that's the first film I watched. Really bad. I wouldn't recommend it. And for those of you who want to have the full list, I'm also gonna leave the link down below in the description so you can check out all of the films into the whole Horrorthon, which yeah, the films that I've pretty much watched. So yeah, then we have KM31, which is like a this is like a Spanish ghost film. I think it was from Spain or Mexico. I'm not too sure, but once again, when it comes to ghost movies, it seems like I'm just tired of that genre in general. I did not care for it. I mean, I did like some of the visuals in it, and some of the acting was okay, but overall, I thought it was really a really bore fest, really. So yeah, KM31, 3 stars out of 10 for that one, and also this 3 star out of 10 for the previous one as well. Then I watched a film which was really damn entertaining, and I think I've seen all of the films by this director now. The director's name is John Fasano, and the film that I'm talking about is Black Roses. And Black Roses is very similar to his other film called Rock and Roll Nightmare. But I would say Black Roses is probably my favorite film by this director. The other films of his has been The Jitters and yeah, Rock and Roll Nightmare, and I think he also did what's that Zombie Nightmare, I believe it's called. I'm not too sure if he directed it or if he just co-directed that film, but I think that's all of the films that he directed. But Black Roses is definitely the best one out of those. So yeah, I really like Black Roses. So yeah, this is from 1988, by the way. And then I watched a film called The Unwanted, which in the beginning of the film it's really slow and really boring. Don't really care too much for any of the characters, any of the acting, but a little bit like halfway through the film, you're like, this might be actually quite interesting because it gets much better from that point. And yeah, I wouldn't. This is a film that I can definitely see myself rewatching at some point. So yeah, The Unwanted from 2014. Then I watched a film which has to be one of the worst films I've seen all year. This was such a damn bore fest. Nothing happened. I mean, it's almost as fun to just look at your wall for 1 hour and 20 minutes. That's pretty much what it felt like. But the film is called Cedar Ridge from 2013. This is also known as The Invoking. Yeah, piece of garbage. I hated this one. So yeah. Then I had this not double pack, but I had this like double feature or whatever, and I decided to watch both of these films because these are like sort of sequels to the previous one, which was called Resident Degeneration, which I've already seen before, but I have never seen any of the other ones. So I watched Resident Evil Damnation and Resident Evil Vendetta, and I prefer. I think the Damnation one was the best one, and Vendetta was the weakest one. But I think it might have something to do with that it's a different director for the third one. So yeah, but I still like these films. So yeah. And then I watched a film called Boar from 2017. One of the main reasons why I decided to pick this movie up was because of the cast, which has Bill Moseley, Nathan Jones, and John Jarrett in it. this is a little bit unfortunate because I think the build up to the entire film is really really great, and then somewhere in the mid section of the film it gets really tedious and really like irritating. But it does pick up something from that. I mean, towards the end. I mean, the end is quite good in my opinion. So, but the mid section of the film just doesn't really fit with the entire rest of the film. So yeah, Boar from 2017. Then I watched a shot a video film from 2000, and by the looks of this film, this looks like it was made in the 80s. Might be something like that. I'm not too sure, but the title alone is such a weird ass title. But the film is called "I'll Kill You, I'll Bury You, I'll Spit on Your Grave Too." What a clever title. To be honest, I expected this to be like the worst thing I've ever seen, but I've gotten more and more into the shot and video genre in general. I mean, just keep in mind that these movies are really really low budgets, and they do the best what they can with their tiny budget, and I think they did a really good job with this one. I wouldn't say straight away that this is a masterpiece or anything, but it's definitely one of the better shot and video films I've seen. So yeah, I gave that movie a 6 out of 10. So yeah. Then I watched a really terrible werewolf film type of deal. A film called Hard Rock Nightmare from 1988. There was barely any music in it whatsoever. I mean, the music that was there was good, but it was way too little music, and the werewolf itself is quite good, but everything else is pretty damn bad in my opinion. So yeah, Hard Rock Nightmare, a huge disappointment. Then I watched a film which was maybe more of a sci-fi adventure type of film, which was really bonkers and really weird. I did not like this one, but it still had some fun parts in it as well. But the movie is called Teenage Caveman from 1958. Uh, yeah, I don't know what to say about it. It's definitely something that you just need to see to believe. So yeah. Then I watched a film called The Last Man on Earth from 1964 with Vincent Price, and what a performance he did in that film. Really entertaining. I think most people probably have seen this or heard of it before. So yeah, The Last Man on Earth, really entertaining. Then I rewatched a film that I've watched for the first time. I think it was last year or like 2 years ago, which I just really really loved. And the film is called Green Room. I think I've talked about this one in my previous um, top 10 horror films between 2010 and 2019. So yeah, Green Room, really entertaining film. I definitely recommend this one if you want to look at some really good newer horror films. So yeah. Then I watched a film called Lone Wolf from 1988. This was pretty much a meh, which sounds really weird, but it's not a film that I loved, and it's not a film that I hated either. It's just like one of those films like you just watch if you're just really bored. You just go ahead and check this movie out. But yeah, Lone Wolf. Then I watched a film by I think it's the producer of the previous film or something like that. A film called The Night Vision from 1987. And the premise for this film is really, really great because it has something to do with a stolen VCR enables whoever watches it to predict the future, but it also shows satanic rites and devil worship. That sounds like a really awesome plot or like storyline, but they don't do enough with that. I mean, it's just a bunch of idiots running around knowing nothing what they're doing. Some of the blood and gore effects are okay, but that's pretty much it. The rest is just garbage, and I mean there isn't really a whole lot of blood or gore to speak of, but the the things that are there is still okay, but that's pretty much it. The rest is just terrible. Then I rewatched the film. I really need to speed up now because I'm only at movie number 16 right now. So yeah, the next film I watched was a film called Vile from 2011, which I have seen before. But yeah, this is one of the better Saw or Hostel like knockoff films. Not the best one out there. I mean, not as good as Saw or Hostel, but I still think if you like those films, you might actually like this one as well. It has sort of a similar premise to it. So yeah, Vile. Then I watched a film which, for some weird reason, right after I watched this film, I thought for myself, "Oh my god, this was god awful." But for some weird reason, I just wanted to check it out again, which is really weird. That happens like nowhere. I mean, this is a film that I would love to get a hold of, but it seems like the Code Red DVD release is so damn pricey everywhere I look. But the film is called The Night of the Dribbler. I really, really like the mask of the killer because this is like a slasher film. It has some like attempts at being comedic, but it's just not. I mean, it's pretty much the opposite of funny. But for some weird reason, it's still funny just because it's not funny, if that even makes sense. But yeah, Night of the Dribbler is that film. And then a film called Blood Salvage from 1990. I thought this was going to be much more gory than it actually was. Because I've heard that this movie had some similarities with like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Eaten Alive, and I thought, man, that sounds really amazing. But I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. It was like just run of the mill horror films, really. Then I watched a Fred Olen Ray film, which I did not like, and I mean, even for Fred Olen Ray standards, this movie was pretty damn bad. And the film is called Evil Spawn, and apparently this movie actually has two other directors to it, or like attached to it. So I'm not really sure how big part Fred Olen Ray played in the whole directing schedule or whatever for this film. But yeah, Evil Spawn from 1987. Except for some really hilarious, stupid like costumes towards the end of the film, the rest is just boring as hell in my opinion. So yeah, Evil Spawn. Then for the first time I watched a film which I've never seen before, but I've had in my collection for such a long time, and I finally decided to watch it, or at least one of my friends suggested this to me. And the film is called Beyond Reanimator, which is the third in the Reanimator trilogy. And I really like this one. I actually like this one more than Bride of Reanimator. I know probably people are like, how the hell can you like this more than Bride of Reanimator? But well, I really like the setting, and that it's like taking place inside of this prison. I really like that. Yeah, Beyond Reanimator, really entertaining film. Then I watched a shot-on-video film called Shrek. No, not Shrek in the Swamp. Shrek, the shot-on-video film. The thing is, I know for sure that this movie is pretty bad at some point, but it has some creative values to it. I think they were quite creative with some of the whole visuals of this film. And even though it drags on for way too long, even though it's just like 75 minutes, it feels a little bit way too long. I still really liked the whole way they shot this and the creativeness of this film. I thought it was sort of charming in a way. So yeah, Shrek, shot on video film. Then I watched the terrible slasher films. There's a lot of slasher films I've watched this month, and sadly most of them has been trash, basically. So yeah. The next film I watched was Girls' School Screamers. Tried to say that really fast 5 times. This is from 1986, and I believe this is a Trauma production, and I thought this was boring as hell. It's just people running around in this house doing nothing, and most of the kills are off screen, and I mean, the little blood and guts that we get here and there is good, but it's not enough to make an interesting film. So yeah, Girls' School Screamers from 1986. Then I watched another slasher film called Open House from 1987, directed by the same guy who did Hack-O-Lantern, which I think is a really hilarious, stupid film. This one is not as good as Hack-O-Lantern, but this still has some really funny parts to it. The funniest part of the entire film is the whole backstory about the killer, of why he's killing off people. I think that was really hilarious and really made it more funny, actually. Overall, I wouldn't say don't watch this film unless you're a big slasher fan like I am. Open House from 1987. The next slasher film, though, has to be one of the worst slasher films I've seen, and the film is called Honeymoon Horror. The only good thing about this film is the opening sequence, or the before the opening credits, really, which is pretty well made actually, but the rest is just garbage. I'm not going to say anything else. So yeah, Honeymoon Horror from 1982. I did not like this one, and the ending is so damn frustrating. So I was like, no way, this is bad. And then another film which was really bad, really, really, really bad. A film called Martian Land from 2015. There's barely any horror elements to this movie whatsoever. It's just basically about this entire storm that approaches Earth, or I think it's Mars or something. Yeah, Mars, sorry, I've completely forgot about that. And yeah, that's the whole thing. It's just a storm approaching Mars. Some of the people living there, and yeah, you wait for the entire film for the storm to approach, and it's boring as hell. People running around not knowing what they're doing. So yeah, Martial Land. Then I decided to watch Friday the 13th Part 7, and this is actually a film that I've said before that this is probably one of my least favorites in the entire series, but I actually like this one more now than I did before. So yeah, Friday the 13th Part 7. Then I watched a film with John Saxon, rest in peace, John Saxon, a film called Hellmaster, and apparently this is also known as Them, which has to be a really stupid title for this type of film. I think Hellmaster is a much better title for this film. The thing is, this movie is pretty damn stupid and pretty damn bad, but some of the dialogue and some of the crazy, crazy editing in this film makes it somewhat entertaining and really laughably fun. And I think John Saxon is probably one of the best actors in this entire film. I mean, he did a good job for what type of things he had to deal with. So yeah, Hellmaster, 92. Not the film I would recommend, but I mean, if you like stupid, funny films, yeah, sure, go ahead and watch it. Then I watched a film called Bottom, which has something to do with the murders that took place there in Finland, like in the 60s, which was never solved, and yeah. So, I didn't care too much for it. Then I rewatched Fright Night. Yeah, I don't think I need to say anything about Fright Night. I love Fright Night. So yeah. And then I watched another really great film which I've never seen before, a film called Hausu, also known as House, but this is like a Japanese horror film from 1977. This movie is so damn hard to explain or like describe. I would say just in the beginning of the film it feels like you're like family type of film, and then all of a sudden it just goes totally bonkers, and I really liked that. So yeah, Hausu. Next film I watched was a film called Playroom from 1990, directed by the same guy who did Dr. Giggles. And I think Dr. Giggles is a very underrated 90s slasher film, but this one was really terrible, except for some of the kills. Other than that, I think it was really boring. And I mean, some of the set designs were really good, but the rest is just awful. Then it was time for another slasher film, this one I really hated. Deadly Intruder from 1985. Piece of garbage. Don't check that one out. Now I just need to speed up, so that's the reason why I don't speak about each and every single title in here. The next one I watched was Moon of the Wolf, and I think it's just baffling that this film has a 5-star rating on IMDb. I hated this film. It just felt like the same sequence over and over and over again. It was like, when with characters you don't care about anyway. So yeah, Moon of the Wolf. Then I watched, this has to be one of the worst slasher films I've seen in a long, long time. And the film is called Deadly Games from 1982. Whew. You could barely see what was going on. The death scenes are awful. You couldn't see anything. I mean, the lighting in this is just awful. It just felt like if Hip Hop Locos was a slasher film, this was pretty much it. And that's not a good sign. So yeah, Deadly Games, piece of garbage. Then I watched a film called The Devils of War from 2013. So bad it's good in some sort of ways, but still a film I would not rewatch anytime soon. And then I watched a creature feature film from 1961. This is a Danish horror film called Reptilicus. And the amount of times they mention that title or that name in the film just makes you... It felt like your brain cells died one after the other every time they mentioned that. So yeah, I really hated this film after a while. So yeah, Reptilicus, awful film. Then I watched Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. I think this is very underrated in the terms of Friday the 13th films. I really like this one, even though most of the film takes place out on that boat. I still understand why they had to do that, because they had some trouble with the budget, and they pretty much realized that it would be really, really hard to film some of these sequences in Manhattan because it's really expensive to make your film out there. So yeah, really like that one. Then I watched a film called Shriek, if you know what I did last Friday the 13th, which was a terrible, terrible spoof horror film. I've not been a big fan of those type of horror parodies in general. I hated this one with a passion. I did not like it. I mean, I thought the first 20 minutes or so were okay, but once you realize that the entire rest of the film is just going to be jokes after jokes after jokes, and you can't get any pause in between, it gets really frustrating and annoying really fast. So yeah. Then I watched a film called Hollow Gate from 1988, another like type of slasher film. I did not like. I mean, I wouldn't say I hated this one. I didn't. I wouldn't say I loved it either. I think this is very underrated. By saying that, I don't say it's a good film, but I wouldn't say it is as bad as people make it out to be. So yeah, still an entertaining like Halloween type of film. So yeah, Hollow Gate. Then I watched a film called Antrum, the deadliest film ever made, which is like a fake documentary like about a real film which has a part in the film itself. It's really hard to explain, but if you want to know more about the film, just look up some other like videos on YouTube. There's a whole lot of really great YouTubers that have already spoken about this film. So yeah, Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. Then I watched a film called Fear No Evil from 1981. I would say half of the film is really entertaining and half of the film is pretty damn boring. So yeah, that's it. Then I watched another slasher film called Evil Judgement from 1984. It has some funny scenes in the beginning of the film, and yeah, that's about it. The rest of the film is pretty damn painful to get through. So yeah, Evil Judgement. Then I rewatched The Stepfather. Enough said. I don't need to say anything else about that. Then I watched a film with Joe Estevez. This is the first Joe Estevez film I've ever watched, and this film is called Soul Taker, and it also has Robert Sedar in it, which was really entertaining to watch. So yeah, Soul Taker, didn't hate it as much as I thought I would do. So yeah, Soul Taker, meh, cat type of film. Then I watched a film called Delusion from 1981. Terrible, terrible slasher film. The music is probably the best part of the film. The rest is really annoying. So yeah. And then I watched a film called Pale Blood from 1990, which has Wings Hauser like overacting in such a charming and funny fashion that it actually gets quite hilarious after a while. So yeah, Pale Blood. And then I watched Night of the Demons, the original one. I really love this one. And yeah, enough said. Out of the films that I've not seen before, because I don't, when I do my top 5 of the month, I never like include films I've already watched before in those type of videos. So I'm only gonna mention the films that I've never watched before that I've been a big fan of. So first off, at number 5 we have Resident Evil Damnation, and at number 4 we have The Last Man on Earth. At number 3 we have Black Roses. At number 2 we have Hausu, and at number 1 we have Beyond Reanimator. So that's my top 5 of the month. Sorry for being really slow with that, but or fast with that list. But I mean, I've been talking for almost 24 minutes now, so I just decided to end the video like this. So yeah, hope everyone enjoyed, and keep your eyes open for the next video. Hopefully I'll get to make some more like horror review videos. So yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.